Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Friday Night Debate on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Keep tuned. We're going to be right back.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jai.
Welcome to Focus on Liberia. This is Friday Night Debate. My name is Dennis Jai. In tonight's debate, we are going to be looking at a very important question. Every now and then you hear, this never happened early in time. Sometimes you hear, what is happening now has never been done in the history of Liberia since 1847. Some even put it as far back as 1822. Most of the time, we see a comparison between the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf government and the George Weah government. On one side, those who support the president argue Ellen left the country in a mess and President Weah is doing very well. On the contrary, people who support the Ellen administration say President Sirleaf took the country from the dust and now President Weah is taking us backward. Whatever side of the argument you stand, that's the debate. So tonight, Mr. Chorpie Charlie, who is a seditious and supports President Weah, is challenging Mr. P. Maurice Kromah, that's Perfect Manager Kromah, on the question, Liberia under President Weah versus Liberia under President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. That's the comparison, that's the debate tonight. Let me welcome Mr. Chorpie Charlie, aka Blow J Nation. Chorpie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me tonight, and good to see my friend Maurice on the opposite side.
I want to welcome also Perfect Manager Maurice Kromah in the debate tonight. Maurice, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis, for the opportunity, and good to see you too, Chorpie. It's I'm excited about this discussion.
Good.
It is often said there is no swimming argument to the water side. So if both of you are at the water side, you can't argue. Just jump in and swim. What they call Norman Day, Black Baby in Daily Observer say, if somebody say he or she is a good dancer, don't argue. Just call the drummer. So Chorpie and Maurice couldn't argue, so they called the drummer, and that's focused on Liberia. And so here are the areas we're going to be dealing with. The major question here is Liberia under President George Weah versus Liberia under President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. That's the topic. I want those of you at home watching the show, this is the debate we're going to be having. So we are going to look at some key areas. We're going to start with healthcare, the fight against corruption, the economy, food and agriculture, education, security and the rule of law, peace and reconciliation if we have time enough. So what we're going to do is every time there is a topic, each will have 2 minutes to respond, and you also have 2 minutes for rebuttal. So at this time, we're going to go to Mr. Chorpie Charlie to give his introduction, his opening on this very important question, Liberia under President Sirleaf versus Liberia under President Weah. Chorpie.
Oh, well, thank you again. And let me say the evidence between the George Weah CDC-led government and Joseph Boakai United Party government is very clear. To make that comparison, we have to look at this first 6 years of Joseph Boakai United Party and compare it with the first 6 years of George Weah CDC. And if we do that, we're going to see that in all of these areas we're talking about, healthcare, other development area, infrastructure development, we will see that George Weah CDC government has done better than Joseph Boakai United Party government. So we're going to make the case tonight, and we're going to draw the contrast and evidence why is it that the claims from the opposite side cannot stand the test of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chorpie Charlie, Blue Jay Nation. At this time, I want to call Morris. Morris, your opening.
Thank you again, Dennis, for the opportunity. I'm really excited about this discussion because it's border on our nationalism, and so we need to have, the discussion about the progress that our country has made since the end of the Liberian Civil War. And I'm hoping that some of the data that we provide tonight will contextualize and give a clear picture of where we came from as a country till when the country was turned over to President Weah. And I'm excited to have this discussion because not only because I served in the government, but because it gave all of us the opportunity to kind of appreciate where we came from as a country. Most of the time, we tend to sit in our small corners and say, "Oh, nothing has happened in Liberia since the war ended." But hopefully, we'll get a clear picture of where we came from, where we are today. So I'm excited.
Thank you very much. So without much ado, let's go to the first issue, and that is healthcare. So in these subtopics, we're going to see how one government performed better than the other. The first question is healthcare, and you go, Mr. Chorpie Charlie.
Well, thank you again. I like the comment or the point that Morris make when he talks about let's look at where the country came from, and I hope that particular point will be well considered in these discussions, because a lot of time there's criticism when the CDC speak to the past. They say, "Oh, why are you still talking about the Joseph Boakai United Party 12 years? Just forget about it and move ahead." But now I'm hearing him talking about we have to look back where we came from. So I like that, and that's where we want to really situate the discussion. Where did George Weah CDC met the country when Joseph Boakai United Party were defeated in the last 2011 and 17 elections? Healthcare. The country was the healthcare system was virtually wrecked. In fact, the whole country, if you look at the Liberia Investment Climate Report 2022 from the United States State Department, it talks about the country not even going back to pre-war level. So imagine when UP 12 years in power and all of the money they had, they still did not take the country back to pre-year. Take, for example, talking about healthcare. All of the major hospitals in the country was down. We had some infrastructure, but they were not really functional. For example, the Jackson Esdo Health Hospital was broken down by the time UP left office. You did not even have an oxygen plant in the country. Most of the hospitals that was built, even the JFK, which should have had its own oxygen plant, and some other hospitals lack those things. George Weah has now put a hospital oxygen plant in the country, and also servicing other major hospitals across the country. This government was able to build hospital facilities with Liberian own money. I'm talking about local resource mobilization, not international funding. That's another answer we have to look at here. We have built hospital. The government has built hospital in Bobolu, in other places. So if you look at the even though it's not up to where we wanted, the Redemption Hospital has gotten some support from the government. You have JFK. They didn't even have a DNA testing over there. This government has brought out. So after 12 years, this government has also made improvement. That's improvement where they met it. And where they met it was even something that was there before the war. So if we actually look at where the government met the country and what has been done, we will not see much to celebrate on the Joseph Boakai 12 years governance. A lot of challenges still we have in the country, a lot of challenges we have, especially so that we don't have the free money was getting in the country for those 12 years. But the difference is that we're able to use our own resources now and manage it in a way that we are doing better than the past, where they even have all the international support. So we have to discount that factor, discount the international money, and look at what Liberia itself has raised, and then measure that also with these two governments, Joseph Boakai United Party, 12 years, and George Weah CDC, now 5 years in power, not even 12 years.
Thank you. And Chorpie, can you use Ellen Johnson Sirleaf instead of Joseph Boakai, because Boakai was not president?
Well, it's Joseph Boakai United Party. It's Joseph Boakai United Party that was in power. I'm speaking of Joseph Boakai.
Thank you. Let's go to Maurice Kromah for your 2 minutes on healthcare.
All right. Thank you, Dennis. So I'm listening to Chorpie, and he's struggling to try to explain.
You will have time to rebut, so go into.
Yeah, I'm not rebutting. I'm explaining. Okay. Give him the chance to say what I want to say, Chief, so that we have.
I want to structure in a way that we have time equally distributed.
Yeah, the whole idea is for us to dialogue on some of these issues. So when I hear him speak about the issue, I have to contextualize it in my response so that it makes sense about what he's saying versus what I'm saying, right? So I'm saying that I'm hearing him talk about healthcare, and he's struggling to explain what this means for Liberia. When the Civil War ended, like he said, and I totally agree, the entire system of our country healthcare system was broken, completely broken. There's no way to explain that, because think about this. So when the conflict ended, we had humongous external debt. $4 billion plus. That's almost 3,100% of GDP. It was, huge. Our internal debt was around $800 million. So it's difficult for you to even talk about constructing anything about health or education or anything if you can't fix the way to even receive money. I'm trying to paint a picture here so you can understand how we came to where we came to. So in 2005, when President Sirleaf took over the country, $85 million budget, $4 billion, almost $5 billion in debt, around $800 million in internal debt that you had in the country to local banks and all this. So clearly there was issues that needed to be fixed. There's no way you can build any infrastructure if you don't have money. So you have to create the space. You have to create the envelope first to raise money before you start to address some of the issues about healthcare. But beyond all of that, before the war, we had about 550 healthcare centers in the country. By the time the war came, that reduced to about 350, maybe 300 healthcare centers in the country. 85% of those that I'm giving you were ran by NGOs. So technically, the government was basically non-existent by the time the war came. So President Sirleaf took over, and there is all this huge, financial burden on the state. It's difficult to talk about building any infrastructure. Like I said, I can't even explain that more. We had less than 100 doctors in the country. So if you look at that picture from 2005, and I'm glad Chorpie said we should just cover the first term of President Sirleaf, because it will be fair to just look at the first 5-6 years of President Sirleaf and compare it to President Weah, 5 years, so that at least we'll have some appreciation for where we've come. So to address some of the issue, like I said, to release some of the financial burden we have with local debt or external debt, you have to create that window, right? Improve the tax system, improve the quality assurance, and all these improvements have to lead to the infrastructure development. So by the time we started to actually fix the healthcare system, construct clinics and hospitals, I'm glad he even mentioned the GFD hospital. Whether it's the GFD hospital or local community clinics all across the country were already around 2009, because you had to fix some of the issues of governance first before you start to address some of these things. And when you talk about all that money that President Sirleaf got and all, it took work, it took effort, it took technical knowledge. This is not magic. It didn't happen overnight because President Sirleaf is a female. I'm ready to debate that also. It didn't happen because of that. It happened because the technical knowledge was there to build the system before you start to address some of the issue with healthcare. I'll rest that now.
Thank you. And again, we'll give each of you 2 points, 2 minutes to rebut. Both of you went way over your time. So let's go straight to the question. So when we're talking like education, tell me how or either Judge Weah did better for education or Ellen Sirleaf did better. Let's go into that. When we have time to kind of interact, you will have that time to respond. So Chorpie, your rebuttal.
Yes, my rebuttal to the health issue first, right, before I answer the education.
Health. We stay on health.
Okay, fine. So what we heard from the brother is that Joseph Boakai Unity Party did nothing in health for the first 6 years of Ellen Jones, of the administration. They did nothing. They were just running around trying to fix, we call it financial questions. But I also want to respond to that issue because the assertion or the characterization that the government was struggling for all these financial things is myth, is false. When the Unity Party came to power in 2005, we already had 3 years of relative peace in the country. In fact, it was as a result of the peace, the country transition, we had a clear democratic elections because the country was at least stabilized at that point. And during that 3 years of interim government, the World Bank had already come to Liberia. It was not the making of Unity Party. They had signed a country re-engagement note. The World Bank left Liberia since 1985. They have returned. They have put in motion what we call the interim poverty reduction strategy. The donor conference that brought the money to Liberia, that did debt waiver, did not evolve from the Unity Party government. In 1998, after Charles Taylor was inaugurated as president, there was a donor conference held in Paris, where the Paris Club, the money that came, that donor conference promised to give Liberia debt waiver. That donor conference promised to do all of the things that were done. But the reason why that did not happen because renewed war came to Liberia. So Taylor was the one who initiated that donor conference program. It was not the Unity Party. The records are there. Check the records. 1998 donor conference on Liberia in Paris. So after that program was already waiting for Liberia to have peace. So one peace came to Liberia. The international community this time were involved in the peace process. UNMIN, everybody stabilized Liberia. The pressure of international forces on the ground assured the world that Liberia will not go back to war. And that's where the confidence level came for them to give that money. So let's take away this reality. This myth that it was some magic by some individual in Liberia that caused that made that. And then the last point I want to make, during that 5 years period, the Joseph Boakai Unity Party government was on international welfare. Let's not forget we had a John Snow or Institute program where they recruited Liberians. International community itself recruited Liberians from across the world, hired them and sent them to Liberia, and they even had international experts working in the Liberian government to transition the country. So where is a real heavy lifting that the Unity Party people itself was doing? So if you take away, that's one of the things we have to look away. When you take away all this international cushion, all the babysitting work that was done, you will see that the Unity Party government did not really display its own governing capability, as opposed to the CDC, where George Weah himself minus at John Sow Institute recruiting people, minus UNMIN, minus all the international factor is doing the real work. The real heavy lifting is what we are doing now, not Unity Party.
Thank you. That took 3 minutes. Let's try to reduce it to 2 minutes. Maurice, your rebuttal.
It's interesting that my man here is saying that that the heavy lifting was done by international, and Charles Taylor is the one that initiated Deb Weah. I mean, Taylor came to office in 1997. Liberia did not experience Deb Weah till probably 2006, 2007, maybe 2008. I mean, that's close to 10 years of gap between when Taylor became president and in President Sirleaf's third year in office. What Chorpie is talking about, the Paris donor conference is talking about, is the conference on aid effectiveness that happened in 1998. And that aid effectiveness was basically bringing all of the OECD countries, the biggest financial successful countries in the world, around the table to have a conversation with developing countries about how to roll out foreign aid and international aid, especially for countries coming out of conflict. And at the time, Liberia was strategically placed in that position to have that conversation because Liberia had just come out of conflict. So we had, serious leverage at the table to talk about what we needed as a country, to talk about aid and how they can support our reconstruction process. That is what Chorpie is referencing as a means for us to talk about this whole idea of, Deb Weah. But I don't think we should delve in too much deep into the Deb Weah thing, because whether or not, the CDC folks appreciate that as a success or not, we can say that Liberia experienced Deb Weah when President Sirleaf was president. Clear cut, period. No, nothing behind that. Now, when we move forward to say we're looking ahead, let's talk about where we met the country in 2005 and the numbers that I just threw out as far as health institutions in the country, as far as NGOs running the country in 2005 and President Sirleaf. Those are facts. There's no way to argue those things, right? For you to improve on that system, to have a system now where Chorpie is bragging about having a Liberian government capacity, is because somebody initiated that process. When President Sirleaf took over the country, there was no capacity in the country. So yes, the John Snow initiative was an initiative to attract technical, educated Liberians to come back home and contribute to reconstruction. Some of those Liberians that returned home are still there and still in the system. So you have to appreciate the strategy to even attract Liberians to go back home, because you didn't have any capacity in the country. But beyond all of that, beyond having diaspora Liberians to return, there was a system put in place to send Liberians out of the country to go and acquire education in technical areas, healthcare, education, all these different technical areas. And those Liberians returned. So within a 5-6 years period, we could say that Liberia now started to paint a picture of progress, because Liberians now were beginning to take ownership of the technical skills that the foreign people were coming to Liberia and working for. We had Liberians replacing them in those strategic positions. There was progress. So it takes planning, it takes effort, it takes far-sightedness. So when we talk about, you talk about President, we are inheriting, is a government now that Liberians are taking over. You have to appreciate how far we came from.
Thank you. So, question for you, Mr. Kromah. What was the impact on healthcare, or where did President Sirleaf take our healthcare system for the first 6 years in office compared to George Weah?
I mean, I explained that. I give you a picture of where the
right. So, what was the impact? Did President Sirleaf do anything at all, or he was just getting the money and setting things up?
When you talk about reconstruction is easier to destroy than to build. When you have the picture I just painted to you, Dennis, to say before the crisis, we have 550 health centers in the country, and by the time the war came and we destroyed more than 80% of that, to fix that with a $4 billion debt and $750 million in domestic debt, at the same time you don't have capacity within the state. It takes several years to fix some of that issues before you actually fix the infrastructure, because infrastructure
So
is the
did
physical.
President Sirleaf
Then
fix
you,
any
then you ask a question.
infrastructure
Let me
at
answer the
all?
question, Chief.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is, so you give the number of hospitals. So under President Sirleaf, did we have 2, 3, 4? What actually did she do?
So by 2009, we had at least 20% increase in the number of health services that were available in the country. It wasn't much because it took a long time to put in place this structure that would fix the infrastructure.
Thank you.
Do you see what I'm saying? So, I mean, they have to, by the time we got to, after the first term, we saw more healthcare centers being available now because, like I said, we have to fix the groundwork first before we start addressing some of the issue with infrastructure.
Thank you. Chorpie, my question to you is, building a healthcare center or training nurses not to it, but are Liberians better off, or are they sicker, or have their healthcare improved under President Weah compared to President Sirleaf?
I'll say yes, and I just cited. I mean, when I talk, I cited one of the critical issues that has to do with this oxygen, because a lot of diseases that people suffer from in Liberia,
right. But what I want to hear is, whatever hospital was built, or the oxygen tank and everything else, did it improve the healthcare of the people? Do you have any numbers to say, okay, we had this number of mortality rate, now it has been reduced to this? Do you have those kind of numbers?
You know, it's a great question you're asking, and that question itself is a whole debate that shows also the failure and incompetence of the last government. Because if you read the Liberia Investment Climate Report, one of the problems we've had in the country after 12 years of government is that Joseph Baga United Party government failed to produce a system that produces, all of the evidence, although we have some valid statistics department at the Ministry of Health and Leges, but the numbers are not very clear. But if you look at what has been happening now, you will see that the contrast between that time and now. So, for example, let's look at the COVID when it hit Liberia. Even though it was not as deadly as Ebola, but there was a better response unit from the Liberian health system as opposed to the past. Somebody will say, "Oh, there were lessons learned from Ebola." Yes, that's true, but the government was quick to provide health facilities, even constructing an urgent military facility that was never in the country since 1822 or 1847. So we have seen physical response by the government and measurable in terms of, like we said, sometimes it takes a long time, but in measuring the success rate in terms of the number of people, quantity is a little bit tricky, but there is measure by the Ministry of Health and Leges. But quickly before I end, I just wanted to correct a point. Just me correct a point.
We'll correct that in the next segment.
No. It's I was wrongly put.
I asked you a question, you answer it. Let's move ahead.
No, but wait.
You can use your time under the economy to address that.
No, but I speak. No, but it's not fair.
Just write your answer down.
It is not a health. No, it is not only health. Sonny, listen.
Yeah, right. So jot that down.
Correcting something. No, but I already wrote it down and I'm speaking now. I'm still in speech.
No, please, let's go by plan.
It's not being fair because I'm still speaking my time to speak. And I'm using this time to correct something. He said, no, I can't correct it.
Right. You answer the question that I asked you.
But I have to correct something he said about me. Attribute a statement to me I didn't say. So I need to correct that.
By the way, the response that Chorpie gave, I actually have a counter to that, but I'll keep mine till.
Right. Let's go to the next topic, which is economy. And please write it down. So this time, Mr. Kromah, you go first on the economy. Liberia under LM versus Liberia under George on the economy.
Okay, so thank you again. I actually have my data here. I can quote my data. So on the economic front, Liberia came out of a dire situation, Dennis, and I can't say it any more than what the facts say. President Sirleaf took over the country in 2005. There was basically nothing that was existing at the time. I mean, the economy was performing around 2.5%. By 2007, when the country started to take shape, we saw the economy growing by 7%, and then 2009 we went to about 4%. 2010 we went to 5%. 2011 we jumped to 8%. 2012, we jumped to 7.9%. 2013, we got 8.6%, one of the highest since the conflict ended. Then 2014, suddenly the Ebola hit, our economy tanked to around 0.7%. But just to give you a picture of how the progression happened between 2005 all the way to 2014 when Ebola hit. I can go on and quote the other numbers, but that's just on the economic front. But on the soft issues in the economy, under President Sirleaf, we have to fix some of the reform issues. So stuff like, public financial management law was revised because we want to make sure that, accountability was full at the front and center. There were challenges, I must say, but the law was revised and improved and updated. And then custom and excise, that whole system was overhauled, staffing, procedure, and all of that was done at custom, just to improve our revenue performance. We introduced what we call the IFMIS system. I don't know if you guys know what the IFMIS is the Integrated Financial Management Information System. Basically, what it is just bringing all of the government agencies and ministries online so that they access public finance through an online process, but also they report through that same online process. So these were new initiatives that were done under the first term of President Sirleaf. Those were indication of how much work that was done in the economy. I can think about other stuff, but let me stop there and give Chorpie the chance to come, and then maybe sure. I can provide additional information.
Sure, Chorpie. So on the economy, what makes the Weah administration better than the Ellen first term?
Okay, let me first correct the misinformation. The Morris attributed to me that I said that debt waiver took place or during the Taylor administration, or that Taylor. I said in 1998, and it's on the book, there was a donor conference held for Liberia. That donor conference was geared towards Liberia reconstruction, which would have addressed debt waiver and all the other things. But it did not happen. The conference was held, the money was promised and everything, but that did not happen because renewed war took place in Liberia. So Ellen was not, the United Party government during that last administration was not doing anything new. They were only doing what was already on the books by the World Bank and the Paris Club. So that United Party, Joseph Burger United Party, did not invent that wheel, the donor conference wheel. It was already there. The records are there. So that's the correction I wanted to make. Now let's come to the economy here. The first thing for this economy, and again, I will keep reminding all of us as people are watching this podcast tonight, the view that is being expressed is that we have to look at where the country came from. The country was in problem, it had all the problems, so we had to try to fix the problem first before we can move forward. I hope we give that same benefit to the Weah administration. Where they met the country at, all the problems, how to fix it first before moving the country forward. So that point will be consistent. When Weah took over, the country was in a deep economic freeze, a valley of poverty. Economy was tank. No international support OMI has left. About $500 million has left from OMI alone. All the international organizations has drawn down because of the schedule they have from the international or World Bank, IMF. But the difference is, under George Weah, CDC, in the first term, there's more domestic resource mobilization than the first term of the past administration. The past administration, yes, they increased the budget, but the money was mostly dependent on donor support. This government is not merely dependent on donor support. It is the government's own domestic resource mobilization effort that is driving the increase in revenue. And so the economy is performing better. And the World Bank, IMF, and all the global institutions has predicted that there is growth in the economy now better than when they met it in 2017. So that's improvement. Other improvement in the economy has to do with one of the major things in the country that kept the economy, the exchange rate. When this government came to power, the exchange rate was flying to the sky. This government was stable at the exchange rate, and it's better now than before. And there are other things in the economy we can talk about.
Thank you. So let me give you the chance now for your rebuttal against what Morris described about the economy. Mr. Chorpie.
Oh, what he described about the economy. Look, again, what Morris is offering, he's offering social cushion by international welfare programs. Look, the reality here is that there's no way we can measure, to truly measure the competence and capability of that administration. We have to manage the international support. And this is the point that we have to make. Again, this government talking about the government came and met the country, all these problems. When that government came to power, again, I repeat, the international community has already intervened in Liberia. They were already pumping money in the country because it was not because of that government. It was because the country was bad off. The country had just come from war. Everything was wrecked. And the international community said, once again, peace will come and help you. It wasn't because of any leader to say that it was Ellen Johnson Sirleaf or Joseph Braga because they were looking good or the Red Book at Harvard University. No. It was because Liberia as a country needed help. And whosoever would have been president, the international community would still get that help. So there was no genius on the part to attract. They didn't attract anything to Liberia. The country condition attracted the international assistance. And so if we manage that thing from the international community, and let's get to this idea. And maybe I'm going to jump ahead a little bit.
Yeah, don't jump ahead. Just
respond. Because no. Listen, we are discussing about economy. We have to draw the contrast. We want to measure the performance level of that government. When the international community left the country after Liberia received debt waiver, they gave Liberia Kromah the pass, and Liberia was left at a minimum level. There was a drawdown from 2013 going forward, where the government was more dependent on the Liberians, the Unity Party government own ability. We saw the country go downward spiral till they left the country in a deep freeze mess. So it shows that they could not govern on their own.
Thank you.
Manage the national community.
Thank you. Let me go to Morris for your rebuttal.
So Dennis, I'm hearing my man Chorpie. This is not a sweet talk conversation. This is something about providing data to justify why you think the country is making progress or the country is in reverse. I've given you, several data on how the economy was growing. And I even pointed out in 2014, when Ebola hit, that we got to negative 0.7% growth. So it shows that the economy did tank in 2014. That is in 2014. That is a fact. We can't argue that. But we have to also appreciate that in 2005, when President Sirleaf became president, the economy was growing at 2.2%, 2.5%. And by 2013, it grew by 8%. When Chorpie talked about domestic resource mobilization, I'm shocked for him not to even appreciate where we came from. Because in 2005, when President Sirleaf talked about the country, the budget was $80 million. $80 million. A high school in America budget is bigger than Liberia budget at the time. So clearly, it was a post-conflict situation. Some of what he says, as far as the country was coming out of crisis, and so all the world had to mobilize around this thing here. When we start to look at foreign aid that goes to Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria, or any country that is in the region, when I start to point out the numbers of how much they've gotten in foreign aid in 2018, 2019, 2020, we clearly see a big disparity in what technical knowledge about receiving foreign aid is versus what the incompetent Weah administration is doing, that is disbarring them from having the same opportunities that were existing during the early administration. I see that they're trying to fix some of that now. We see that the past compact, it took some effort, it took some time. We must acknowledge that. I do acknowledge that. Because like I tell people, I'm a Liberian before I even attach any political affiliation to myself. So I acknowledge the fact that it took effort, and I appreciate that. But you have to appreciate from $80 million, you come to a period in 2017 when the budget is around $600 million.
Thank you.
You still don't have an appreciation for such a thing. And you talk about donor support and the exchange rate. There's no way you can tell me exchange rate was off the roof in 2017 when Weah became president. Give me the data. Don't tell me, don't throw a number, don't throw a statement out there saying the exchange rate was in the roof. Where did it come from? Where it was in 2017 when we are talking about the country. Then we can have a debate on it.
Thank you. So, Chorpie, the question for you here is, when it comes to economic models, right? Let's look at numbers. So, look at GDP, look at prices or inflation, the HDI, the budget, exchange rate, take-home pay. So, look at all these things. Did things improve on the Weah compared to Ellen? Did we?
No. You see, look, the numbers does not explain what happened, and I think this is where
give me some numbers that tell me that.
Yeah, no. Let's look. The numbers by itself does not explain what happened in the country. We have to be able to explain these things. Take for example, when that government came to power in 2005, a majority of the citizens of the was already outside the country, right? So if there was jump in the economy, the budget grew from 80 million to wherever million it grew up to. That number itself does not explain how it grew for us to give credit to somebody that they are good in governance. That would be a misunderstanding because they did not make the number to grow. That's the point. What we are discussing here, we are trying to understand the competence of that government versus this government. And to understand our competence, we have to look at how these things happen. How it happened will tell us whether that government was competent or not. Not just to say, oh, we got 5 bucket here, 10 bucket here. How the bucket got there will show us whether the person who put the bucket there were able to put the bucket there or not. So I'm saying here, when our government took over in 2005, the international goodwill was not a function of their competence.
Okay.
So, and I'm citing, take for example, Liberians everywhere in the world, a lot of people return home. When those people return home, they were in Ghana, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, all these places. Their family that was sending remittance to them in the country, those remittances also transferred to Liberia. So it also bubbled the money in the country. It was not Ellen Johnson Sirleaf or Joseph Boakai or Unity Party that caused that to happen. So I'm saying,
let me follow up. So you were saying, in essence, and tell me if I'm wrong, you were saying Liberia was better, but we can't credit the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf administration. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying there was improvement when they took over in 2005. I'm not discounting that. I've said that repeatedly. When they took over in 2005, there was improvement. But we are trying to, the question we are understanding here is whether they are competent and capable to perform that task. And I'm saying the reality does not show the competence and capability.
No,
that's the point.
The question is Liberia under Weah and Liberia under Sirleaf, because that's what we hear all the time. So what I'm hearing you saying is things were good or things were better.
No, it was not good. No, it was not good.
The people responsible, that's international goodwill, is Liberians abroad sending remittances. So all the good things that were happening, they really happened, but Ellen and his government were not responsible. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Okay. I will not say good, I will use the word improve. Things improved after 2005. Right. That improvement cannot be credited to them. That's my point.
In 2005, when President Sirleaf took over the country, we have foreign direct investment, FDI, was around $6 million in 2006. By 2017, when President Sirleaf was leaving office, we have foreign direct investment around $398 million. That's not remittances. Foreign direct investment. I want Chorpie to tell me between 2017 to 2022, how much have we gotten in FDI? Let him please tell me that. It's really important for our conversation, because from 6 million in 2006 to $398 million in 2017, that's a huge jump. In 2006, when President Sirleaf came to office, we had 5,257 registered businesses, both Liberian-owned business and foreign-owned businesses. By 2010, we had 8,200 register businesses in the country. Those are clear indications of the progress that the country made. It can't be ascribed to remittances. For heaven's sake, it can't be. I'm not ignoring that remittances did not play a part. I'm not saying that, because I know that remittances is actually huge. But to say that you're ascribing that to remittances is unfortunate, because the economy did grow. People saw the difference in their lives. People were able to drive on the paved road from Broad Street. In 2005, people couldn't drive on Broad Street on a paved road. 2007, people started driving on paved road from Broad Street all the way to Cinco. It used to take 3 hours to get to Cinco.
Thank you.
But I think again, there's a mischaracterization that I need to correct. I never said remittances are responsible for the economic improvement in the country. I cited several different things, and you remitted was one of those things.
That's true. So
yeah,
Chorpie,
correct the record.
So let me give an example, right? Like for instance, they have the MCC scorecard. They say if you qualify, if you do XYZ, you're going to get this money, right? So good. You are saying the Sirleaf government did not do anything to deserve whatever they got. And I'm using MCC scorecard as one of those measures, right? Say, do XYZ, we're going to give you this money. If they have failed, if they have consistently failed the MCC scorecard, they won't get some of the money that they got. What do you say to that?
Okay, fine. So let's correct the record again. I did not say they didn't do anything. I'm saying the credit that has been given that they were responsible for all of what happened is false. Now, 5 years in power, that administration failed the first 5 years, similarly like this government. The first 5 years, that government did not pass the MCC test. They flunked. They failed. They failed. They passed after 5 years. And I'm saying, let's look at the 2 5 years that each of these governments passed on them. I'm saying that government, their passing cannot be wholly attributed to them because they had international cushion, right? You talking about foreign direct investment coming to the country. The foreign direct investment was not just, again, I go back to that problem. Take, for example, we had NOCA in the country. NOCA, the company called NOCA was not established by Unity Party government. It was established by Charles Taylor. The 17 oil black in Liberia were established by Charles Taylor. That brought foreign direct investment. The country was already attracted naturally for foreign direct investment after the war. People had to return to rebuild their lives. That government did not tell Liberians to go back home. People who lost their businesses had to go back to continue doing businesses. It was not, I'm saying that don't make it as if to say you are responsible for bringing John Brown, who went to rebuild his house, for a company that broke down Metal Steel. I mean, Firestone company that was in Liberia. It was functioning well before the war. After the war, when that government called Firestone went back, it was not because that government at Firestone went back. They carried foreign direct investment. They went back because they had a business there and they had to redo business. So I'm saying we have to discount these factors to really understand whether that government was actually competent and capable to deliver as they are claiming. And when we look at these factors, they were not. They are not because they were being babysitted.
I mean,
they were not functioning on their own.
Thank you.
You can't say that.
Thank you. Hold on, Morris.
Metal Steel was operating like Liberia before the conflict. You can say China Union was there before the conflict.
Not the need.
We'll revisit that point when we get to food and agriculture, because we have a lot to cover. Let's do it boom, boom, and then if we have time, we can go back and forth. Under food and agriculture, let's compare Liberia under President Sirleaf and Liberia under President Weah. Chorpie.
Oh, there's another bad place.
Let me give us some data, please. Data.
There's another bad place. Look. I mean, I'm going to point to you research because the numbers again, like I said, these numbers does not explain. I can start 5 million numbers here. It does not explain the situation. So you're talking about food and agriculture. The United Nations Coordinated Office for Coordinated Humanitarian did a research in Liberia in 2008. I'm talking about way after the 6 years of that administration. 2008, along with the Food and Agriculture Organization, that research shows that Liberia was backwards. They have done no real investment, no investment in food and agriculture. In fact, the recommendation as a result of that research, I'm going to that research because these numbers are not going to explain to us this reality because nothing was existing. The Food and Health 2008 research, it says that The recommendation was Liberia should invest in short-term investment for food, to feed school children for nutrition, and it also proposed long-term investment. It also talked about the price of rice on the Liberian market during that period. It was around $30 plus a bag of rice. So I mean, I didn't do that research, but the reality here is that government. So we're talking about 2008 research. We mean the first 6 years of that government, they did nothing. As my brother has been saying, that they were looking for money, they were trying to fix these things. There is no serious improvement that was in the economy. Nothing was going on. There was no, I mean, farmland was not available. The only thing the government did for the first 6 years, you can look at all the executive order issue. They were issuing executive order every year for subsidies to importers of rice. That was a bigger agriculture investment they did on that 5 years. That first 5 years was to give more money to importers to import rice. This government, the first 5 years has not been the case. I do concede there was some other program that the government met in place after that first 6 years, but comparing 6 years to 6 years, the first 6 years was a abysmal failure. After the first 6 years, they did some programs. This government came into place and has improved upon those programs around the country, where today public-private partnership with local farmer is giving higher yields to the country. They are producing more food now on the Liberian market as before. When you compare to the past, it's not what we want. We don't appreciate that. We have not reached an appreciable point, but there is improvement in that area, and we need to do more than that.
Thank you, Morris.
So 2008 was 2 years after President Sirleaf got inaugurated into office. President Sirleaf got inaugurated in 2006.
Oh yeah, yes.
2008 is just 2 years after she got inaugurated.
Yes, 2 years. Yeah, you're correct.
So I mean, just for the record, I just wanted to contextualize.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
So on the agriculture front, and I mean, Chorpie have made it easy for me as far as the setting up a system that continued till our President Weah took over the country. But overall, it's hard for us to talk about these things if we don't talk about some of the numbers to them. By 2005, when President Sirleaf took over the country, we had a negative 10% growth as far as rice production, just growing rice. We had a negative 10%, but we saw some increase over the years. So in 2006, we went to 15%. 2007, we dropped to 10%. 2008, we got to 30%. 2009, we got 12%. 2010, 4%. 2011, 4%. So we saw, at least the seesaw, right? We go up, sometime we drop, and that kind of production, we're trying to create a system where Liberians can start to think about, growing their own food. So there were investment made in the agricultural sector that stimulated that kind of growth. You can have an agricultural program when you have a negative 10% growth. It means people are losing interest, and the country has a young population. So unless you pump some money into the sector, it's not going to be an incentive for people to drive towards that, because most of the young people in Liberia up to now still don't have skills. Most of them are pimping riders, and that's what they use for livelihood. But if you put money in agriculture and stimulate it, people will actually get interested in it, and they will actually, see it as an incentive to go into the agriculture sector. But beyond that, I mean, the cocoa industry too was a big challenge. We had a negative 47%. About 2006, we saw a 5% growth. Same thing in 2007, 2008, we jumped to 25%. 2009, we got 15%. By 2010, we had 187% growth in cocoa. So there was some progress. But like I said, in post-conflict, reconstruction and development, that growth is gradual. I mean, we'll come to the education part, and I'll explain some of why we have some of the things that we're having now. But
thank you.
Some of these things are done systematically. You have to think about it and think long term. Otherwise, you're not going to see progress over the way we saw some progress up to 2014 when the Ebola hit and then our economy tanked.
Thank you. I'll play a short video and we'll ask some questions from there.
Okay.
All right. Keep tuned. All right. So the question is, are Liberians balling now than 6 years ago? And the way we know from the balling is, according to those guys, if Papa coming home can buy spoon, when the car carry the dog before your ball, children going home for school fees, you can buy the baby rubber draw. So are Liberians balling now than 6 years ago? Chorpie, you go first.
You know, and I see my men keep throwing these numbers up and down in the discussion. These numbers means nothing. And we have to explain this number, and that's why I think we have to keep shaming this number so that people can appreciate what we're talking about. I can throw all kinds of numbers here tonight that show that we have higher yields in agriculture, but that's not the reality. You talk about 10% at the agricultural level when that government took over in 2005. The reality here is that most people were not even making farm. People ran away from war.
I said negative 10%.
Yeah, negative.
It was nothing.
Negative. Yeah, I agree. I do agree that it was negative. But again, there was no investment done by the government. The government did not or do that growth. When people return to their various places, not actually their various places, they needed food to eat. They started making farms, so there was more produce on the market. It was not because government programs. I mean, these are the realities. So I'm saying that government is checking somebody farm, somebody in Lofa County making their own farm to feed their family, and government checking out produce and counting it and saying, oh yeah, there's improvement in production on the market. It does not mean that government did not invest. I just told you a full agriculture 2008 research, and even after that, there were other research done that government did not invest in our program. So this number has to be explained. And we can just throw this number out now. And let's come back to that music. That music is a response to the negative condition in the country. And it's interesting if you listen to most of the local songs at the time in Liberia, most of the music in the time in the country, you will see that they were all talking about the deep economic suffering of the people. I mean, one of the famous music that and one of the supporter of now Unity Party, Joseph Boakai, Miata, as he's commonly called, Miata family, she made a song describing the condition of the country and the corruption. She called it Big C.
So my question is, what's about now? Are people
So now,
6 years ago?
Now, this is why I said, and I repeat it, we have to appreciate where the country was when this government came to play. We have to appreciate that reality too. We cannot ignore that reality and say this government had to make magic. This government, without the second factor we have to appreciate, without the international support, and it is not because the government was bad that they're not getting international support. No, international welfare had a time limit.
Right.
When the time limit reached, if you read the Paris Club, the donor formula, the numbers that
you keep going back to this point.
No,
right?
But we have to explain this thing. No.
What I'm saying is because you are saying okay things, and you say you are not saying that, but you keep going back to it. Things were bad, things were good, but it was not the Sirleaf government. Things happened on their own. Or it was because of the international.
Things are relatively the same. Look,
that's the point I want you to address, because I
would say things are relatively the same with marginal progress. I'm saying things are relatively the same with marginal progress. The conditions of the country are almost the same, but there is progress in some areas. They're better off. So generally, I would say the country is better off than the past. But we have to explain what happened during that time for people to appreciate. Because even look, this projection, and I just want to make the point quickly. The GDP projection that Murs were projecting for the government, Unity Party government. If you look at the IMF, the World Bank, the Paris Club reports, before even debt relief was given to Liberia, they projected those very numbers 3 years ahead of time. So it was because they were pumping that money to the country, they understood what that money would have done and how the economy would have improved. So it was not a function of their genius. That's what I'm saying. The Paris Club predicted all those numbers 3 years ahead of time. So it was nothing they did, really.
Thank you. Morris, are Liberians balling now than 6 years ago?
I would say no, Dennis. And I'll say no because of several reasons. Not because I hate Josh Weah. I have no personal relationship with Josh Weah if I'm not hate him. But I think the country has regressed he has gone back a little bit from the progress that he was making by 2017. So the people are complaining, and they've demonstrated that through the elections of the officials. President Weah by 2017 was the most popular Liberian. People were joining CDC because they felt everywhere President Weah going, put your hand up, just to say this person is my candidate, you will win the election. Hands down, no argument about it. 5 years later, President Weah will not do that anymore because he doesn't leverage. He did not leverage the relationship that he had with the ordinary people. Some of them are disappointed. Some of them are angry. Some of them have made it personal. Some of them have become, just lethargic and say, you know what, I'll just live with this condition. It's the way I see this thing is that our country has to for us to address some of these issues that we're talking about, whether it's President Weah government, whether it's President Sirleaf government, whether it's the future government. I'm trying to stay away from making this thing a united party and a CDC debate, because if we make it a united party and CDC debate, then it becomes partisan and then it becomes more political. And I'm trying to give you some of these data to show that the country is shaking. There are so many indicators of, failure. Some of the issues that can fix the economy, people turn a blind eye to it. There are allegations of massive corruption from the Central Bank of Liberia to the census to, just all of the things that you can talk about that can fix our country economy. The government have not paid attention to it. Our finance minister is busy on Facebook debating about some of these things and making it, a partisan thing when we're supposed to be having a serious conversation about how to increase, the economy and the economic performance of the state. And unless we fix those things, we're going to have issues. I'm trying to stay away as much as possible from, the route that Mama Chorpie is taking with this Joseph Boakai, Joseph Boakai, Ellen. I'm not going to go that route, but I know that the country is not making any progress.
Let's talk about security and the rule of law.
So on the side of security and rule of law, I think massive progress was made in this area, because not only because there was a need for it, because we just come out of conflict. So we had to restructure the entire security apparatus of the country. We had to fix, the issues of rule of law in Liberia. So restructuring the army, the police, the immigration, and all these security agencies require a lot of effort and a lot of money. Recruiting Liberians with just minimum qualification of high school was difficult, because we came out of 14-year war. Schools were closed. People became adults. They didn't, have basic education. And so it became a challenge. But somehow you can see evidence of the army to show that the work that was put into the reconstruction of the military today is still showing. They are a very professional group of people. On the police side, there were some challenges. There are still some challenges. Yeah. The police did not get the kind of, reconstruction process that should have been put in place. We didn't do that. They were reconstructed, but I don't think they got the kind of support that the military got.
Yeah. So on the issue of rule of law, is Liberia safe today than under President Sirleaf? And also, can we impose the rule of law?
Very beautiful question. To say, is Liberia safe today than it was under President Sirleaf under her first 6 years? I would say no, because we can also see evidence of, people dying secretly, people, bodies being identified in communities where people don't know how they died, but they just wake up and see the body in the morning. We saw 2 people die on Broad Street, the major street in Liberia, and the president's justification was that boyfriend and girlfriend, and they were in the car and they died in the car from smoke inhalation without investigation. Government have launched investigation into people's secret death. There is no report whatsoever on any of those investigations that the government has launched. So we know for a fact that under the first 5 years of President Weah, people are not safe. They are afraid to speak on some of the issues that are affecting going in the country because they fear for their life. the first 6 years of President Sirleaf, I would say the first 2 years were struggling because it was, how you call it, post-conflict. So there was a group like Isakaba, who was just, hurting people. That issue was fixed over, over the remaining years. We saw crime reduced. There are, so much data out there to show how much crime reduced under that term. So yeah, on the rule of law part, we can talk about that, but those are basic issues that I can talk about.
Let me go to Chorpie for security, the rule of law, safety. Are people safe? If you want justice, can you get it under the rule of law? Comparing the first 6 years of President Sirleaf and now
if we compare the rule of law, I will argue that we have improved because we are doing a comparison. We're not talking about the condition of the country, whether everybody are happy in the country or not. So when we do that kind of comparison, we will see that on a rule of law, there is improvement on a rule of law. There's a better condition as opposed to the 6 years or even 12 years. And to really appreciate that question, again, I have to use the same measurement that my friend is using. Where was the country when George Weah took over? Were there improved security conditions? Were the justice system functional? All of these issues that has been raised, were they operating? No, nothing was there. I mean, it was dysfunctional. So then you have to judge Weah from that point of getting a dysfunctional country and now trying to move. And there are some areas, and while we are talking about it, I just wanted to quickly comment to the point where he said, and I'm linking it to this rule of law, where he said that young people in the country don't have skill, they are just running back. I disagree with that characterization. Many young people, as far as right at the end of the Civil War, has been involved in all kinds of capacity building, skill training set, VTC, all the TVET program in the country. They have trained people year upon year upon year upon year. The problem is, even with 12 years on Joseph Baga United Party, they failed to create opportunity for job for these people. And so the people had to find themselves riding back. They don't possess skills. They got all kinds of skills, carpentry skills, masonry skills, all kinds of different skills. So that problem itself speaks to the failure of that government, which has also negatively impacted the rule of law in terms of people behavior in the country. But let's look at even one of the problems that we've had with the police. We're talking about the police right now, rule of law, to really show the difference and the improvement with rule of law. The police in the past was very violent on the 6 years of the United Party government. A very violent police. It was not the lack of training. Again, they had similar skills. There was the UN trained them, the same way how the military was giving training. But the command structure, the leadership of the country and the leadership of the police department at the time did not inspire the respect for rule of law. So the police department was very violent. They were very undemocratic. We saw a lot of time the police abusing people in the country, violently attacking political dissent. I mean, these things are minimized now, where the police has even gone out doing protests to give. On the first 5 years, we've seen the police are giving food, water to protesters, showing a different kind of police department, and improved police department from the past.
You mean they're giving water and food to Christopher?
Protesters. I mean, we've seen that under this government.
You're not going to ask a follow-up question on this one. You're not going to ask a follow-up question on this?
No, Mr. Kromah, you have your rebuttal.
Okay. It's interesting that Chorpie is making these assertions as facts. I'm still, since we started this, I haven't heard Chorpie say anything about the percent of Liberians that have improved, the number of Liberians that are feeling more secure. Development is not in outer space. It's not just making let there be and there is. You don't use magic wand to make it happen. Development is a process. You have to think about it, conceptualize it, and then work towards achieving it. So, I mean, he said we should measure where the country was when President Weah took over the country. You can, for heaven's sake, you can argue that the country was not safe when President Weah took over the country in 2005, but suddenly the country is safe. Like,
I didn't say what I said.
What is the measure? What is the measure of that safe that you're talking about? What is the measure of unsafe in 2007 when President Weah took over? If we're able to measure that between the time President Weah took over and the current state, then we know whether the country is safe or not. But to say, well, the country was not safe in 2017, in 2022, the country is safe now. It's just, like a magic wand. I can sit there and say that same thing. I can sit there and tell you right now that in 2005, President Sirleaf took over the country was not safe. In 2011, the country automatically became safe. But we have to look at the indicators of how that progress happened. And we can't do that unless we look at what the facts are. The fact of you saying that young people have developed skills, I'm not ignoring the fact that young people haven't developed skills. Chorpie, we have 70% of our population that are young people. So if you have 10% of those people developing, let's assume that your statement is a fact. Let's assume that all of the young people that are in our country got skills now. Carpentry, masonry, they're doing all these different skills. They don't have to look for a job. Job will come to them. Automatically job will come to them. Those are indicators. So you can't just make a statement and say, well, I disagree. Young people got skills now. That's not how you talk about development. You have to talk about in the context of growth.
Thank you.
The last part I want to present here is the assertions of violence. That in 2000, before President Weah came to power, the police was violent, and suddenly now, because there is Patrick Sudu, who's the head of the police now, there's no more violence in the country. You've been disingenuous, because we know what happened during several protests in Liberia where young people got injured. They actually, people almost lost their life from these protests. So you have to acknowledge that something wrong before you fix it. But if you can't even acknowledge it on a public podcast like this, how can you fix that problem? That is the problem. This is the disingenuous attitude of the CDC people that got them where we are. You have to acknowledge that something good happened, and let's work on that good. Something bad is wrong. Let's fix that bad that is wrong. But to outrightly just say, everything is good now because President Weah is president, it's disingenuous.
Thank you. Morris, you're taking more than 2 minutes. Chorpie, I'm coming to you for your rebuttal. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's unfair. He keep mischaracterizing me. I never said no violence has occurred in the country. We're measuring the level of improvement. Improvement does not mean nothing, no bad thing happening.
So tell me how the improvement. I don't know the improvement. Tell me.
But explain it. So you mischaracterizing me to say that I said no violence happened, nothing bad happened. We are making comparison whether there were improvement in police behavior and police performance. I talked about the improvement. I didn't say nothing bad happened. And you're talking about the protest. My specific point was the protest you just referenced was not done by the police. That's the kind of improvement we're talking about. That was citizen to citizen violence. In the past, under the Joseph Baga administration, the United Party administration, the police itself was a violent perpetrator. They was actually engaged in the violence.
So you're saying the high school students that protested under President Weah, it was...
Go ahead, Chorpie.
No. I again, my point, I did not say no violence has occurred under George Weah. I'm saying the police itself was involved in the violence in the past. The protest you just referenced was citizen against citizen, or not the police brutalizing people. That's why I said it's an improvement in police behavior. And these are facts. So it doesn't mean there's no violence in the country. It doesn't mean there's no crime in the country. But we talk about improvement.
You saying that I know at least 2 or 3 protests that happened.
Hold on, let him finish.
High school students protested, they were beaten by police. Are you saying that's not a fact?
Let me finish, my friend. At least there is improvement in police behavior. That's a fact. Now, you made another point about people having skills and job will come to them. Again, that's why I said these numbers you throw in there around does not explain things. The first thing in the country, the way the country was left or by the United Party, even if somebody has skills, for example, a man have a masonry skill to build a house, how will job come to him when you have less people in the country with money who are only looking for money to feed themselves, as we saw in the music? They're not even thinking about building house because they don't even have the means to go the extra mile. How would that man with his skills, the masoner, he got masonry skills, but nobody thinking about building house because they don't have money? How would job go to that man when people are only looking for the bare minimum to eat? So these numbers you throwing around again have to be explained. You know.
Thank you. Let's deal with this last portion, and then we bring in our callers. That's the fight against corruption. Corruption. For the first 6 years of President Sirleaf, compared to the first 6 years, the first term of President Weah, what is the level of fight against corruption that we've seen so far, and what have been the outcome, what have been the result? Let me go to you first, Morris.
You always start with me, but that's fine. So, I mean, you know,
I thought you started with me.
No, it's okay. I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. It's okay. It's okay.
Oh, yes, you are complaining.
No, I'm not complaining. I'm not
okay.
Dennis, I'm not complaining. So, you know, before I even talk about the corruption, I want to come back to that, you know, violent part, because I know there was a protest with high school students in Monrovia under President Weah. The police did brutalize high school students, and nothing came out of it. There was a protest at the Capitol building where, you know, people were protesting against the hardship in the country, and the police brutalized them and used the hot water spray to get them off the street. People got injured. There were university student protests at the university campus where police got involved, and they brutalized university students. So to come and say that things, you know, are okay with the police, you are still being disingenuous, but I'll leave that. On the side of, what's the topic we're discussing again?
Fight against corruption.
Okay, corruption. So on the first 6 years of President Sirleaf, we can attribute some progress to her on the issue of corruption, because there were institutions set up, internal institutions set up to address the issue of corruption. Mark my word, there are key words I'm using: institutional system set up to address the issue of corruption. So there was the, you know, GSC, the Internal Audit Commission. By law, technically by the Constitution, the National Legislature is supposed to be another arm that's supposed to checkmate what happened with the executive. But when you're in bed with everybody become corrupt. So the issue of corruption in Liberia, from my own perspective, is a systemic problem. Just like we saw massive, you know, there were people, and I believe President Sirleaf made that to some of this in her last statement before she left office, that one of the areas she feels she didn't do a good job in is the area around corruption. So even though there were institutions set up to address corruption, some of the people that were caught in the web, that people were trying to hold accountable, the system didn't hold them accountable. We must admit that those things were, you know, part of the failure of the administration to address the issue of corruption. But there was a perfect opportunity by the new administration to come in and see how they can fix some of that. So when the new administration came, this noise about NOCA, there was President Weah set up a committee to investigate NOCA, and everything that happened, the committee did their work, submitted a report to the president, and nothing happened. There were allegations of, you know, central bank, something happened with people money there. The finance minister publicly telling Liberian people that they went to Nukutown to change the money to get US dollars. Nothing happened. People protested, $1 billion back. Nothing happened. So clearly, there's, you know, is a lack of incentive to actually enforce the issue of corruption under President Weah.
Thank you.
Some of the institutions are already still existing, but they don't have teeth to bite. LSCC, GSC, internal audit, you know, whatever, or commission or whatever that institution name, I forgot the name, but, you know, those are institutions that can address the issue of corruption.
Thank you, Mr. Chorpie Charlie.
Again, you know, the institution that is being talked about, this institution has always existed in Liberia. So internal auditing, whatever it is, I think the only institution I can give credit to the Unity Party for establishing, and which did not happen in the first 6 years, is the Liberian Revenue Authority. That's the only institution I think they rightfully took that away from the finance ministry, which should not have been under the finance ministry, and they made an autonomous agency, which is supposed to be an autonomous agency because that's almost like a legislative related to the legislature, because legislature is responsible for revenue in the country. So
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Well,
no, they're not.
well,
Let's
well,
correct that,
well,
please.
we read the
Legislators are
Constitution.
responsible for revenue.
Yeah, let's go to
read
the
the
fight
Constitution.
against corruption.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Don't talk about revenue.
We can debate that later on. The Constitution is very clear on who is responsible for money in the country. So I'm saying that
apportioning money and collecting money are two different things.
That's not a debate here today. No, that's not a debate. Because it's very clear.
Okay.
I'm saying that I can only give them credit on that, which did not even happen in the first 6 years. At least they took away that revenue aspect from the executive branch and made it an autonomous agency, which is not solely directly under the executive branch or the president. So, but it did not happen in the first 6 years. But the GSC, come on, the very GSC we're talking about, the men who were recruited for the GSA was recruited by the international community, John Molu. That was one of the conditions for Liberia to even get debt waiver. So again, these things had to be explained. There was no genius on the part of that government to do these things. It was conditioned. They were compelled. They were forced. The international community sent people there to do that work. But here is a fight against corruption. The report that just came out from the Millennium Corporation Challenge, the Bible for the Unity Party, that is their Bible, it says very clearly that this government passed controlling corruption. There's no other scientific evidence. We can debate all you want to debate. It says that the government under George Weah control corruption. The Bible of the Unity Party, the Millennium Corporation Challenge. And that report is very, very, very important because it just is not showing the competence of this government, but it's demonstrating how Liberians on their own can also respond to the institutional problems that despite all of the international support that Joseph Baga Unity Party had, they still could not respond to this question. It took more than 10 years for the UP. And interestingly, just before I went, someone talking about this point about corruption. The MCC score for this government is the highest than the Unity Party in the whole 12 years of power. The first 5 years to 5 years. The first 5 years to pass the test, CDC first 5 years was scoring higher marks than them. But controlling corruption, the best evidence is the MCC report is very clear. That is, you cannot debate that. That is Unity Party Bible. It says George Weah passed the corruption controlling test.
Thank you, Chorpie.
Dennis.
Morris, your rebuttal.
So,
by the way, before you come in, our numbers are on the screen. If you want to call to join the conversation, the number is 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403#. So, Morris, please use 2 minutes to rebut. Chorpie will have his turn, and we go to our callers. We got callers already on the line.
So, the issue about corruption has to be an institutional thing. I'm hearing Chorpie talking about using the MCC as a benchmark for institutional corruption within the context of the country. If you take the MCC as your measure to say, well, George, we have addressed corruption in Liberia, then again, you're doing the country a disservice because, yes, I mean, you did well. I'm so excited. Not excited because, first of all, MCC, you're making an erroneous statement about MCC, under President Sirleaf's first term. MCC came to existence in 2004, and President Sirleaf took over the country in 2006. So we didn't start compact until almost the beginning of the second term. That's when we actually say, let's pay attention to this compact and see how we can work towards achieving compact. And, it happened. But we shouldn't be measuring who scored high and who scored low. The fact that you got compact is good for the country because here you're going to get $250 million that can fix some of our infrastructural issues in the country. I'm excited about it. I'm not against Weah. I told you this. I'm not against the CDC government. It's good for our country. Nationally, we all should celebrate it. But let's be honest with ourselves. The institutions that are supposed to address the issue of corruption It's not MCC report. We have the institutions. The LCC published a report that indicted the Minister of Agriculture. It indicted people from the from legislatures. And still the government did not do anything about it. How can you talk about MCC as a measure of your corruption issues in the country? We have allegations of $25 million being missing from the Central Bank of Liberia, and nobody lost the job. The only reason that we have 3 public officials resign from government, now we are firing them, is because a foreign country somewhere in the West said these people are corrupt. Take them out of government. That's the only, and the first, we didn't even fire them. We have to say, okay, you're suspended. And that pressure allowed them to resign from their positions. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have done it. Let's think about Liberia in the way that there is institutions that need to enforce these things. When the report comes from LCC saying this person is alleged to be involved in corruption, it means the people have to act. They mean President Weah has to act. And if President Weah don't act, another body that is responsible to do such thing about it is our national legislature. I made that comment just now. But
thank you,
Boris. The national legislature don't act on it is because they are in bed with the executive. They make the executive, the presidency, an imperial presidency.
Thank you, Morris.
So it makes it difficult for you to do things when you're actually at the legislature that's supposed to be another watchdog for the society that they represent.
Thank you.
But unless we fix this thing, we have a problem.
Thank you, Morris. You're taking more time. You are over 3 minutes. Go ahead, Chorpie, your rebuttal. Rebuttal should be just 2 minutes.
I like the way how, my man can mischaracterize my positions. We were talking about fighting corruption. The question was not about whether there's no corruption in Liberia, corruption has been eliminated. Whether this government is fighting corruption than the last government, especially with the 5 years of 5 years. And you got to always think about this question this way. And I was pointing to the MCC to show that this government is fighting corruption better in the first 5 years. I didn't say no corruption in the country. I didn't say nothing happened. They said who is fighting corruption. So I stand by that statement. And another interesting point he makes, he said the firing of the official cannot be credited to George Weah. Is because the United States sanctioned, so Weah was forced to take the action. I can accept that. So then go back to all of the claims that I've been making against the Unity Party, especially the first 6 years. He is saying I should also give credit to Ellen Johnson Sirleaf or Joseph Boaga, Unity Party, for that first 6 years. The same tenor he just gave to George Weah, that it was international partner pressure. It's the same tenor that I'm applying on that 6 years. That all of those things that he claiming that was done was a function of international welfare. And so the same way how George Weah is not going to take credit for firing 3 officials is the same way that Unity Party, Joseph Boaga cannot take credit for those 6 years of doing those things. I mean, that's a fair standard. We can't be double dipping. You can't do it one way and we got to use the same standard across the board. So when we look at it that way, we'll understand. And then he makes another point about $25 million, who is linked. He talking about $1 billion printing. Look, the reality here is the Unity Party has been very deceitful to the Liberian people. The $16 billion was not printed on George Weah CDC government. That's the fact. That money was never printed. No $16 billion came from on George Weah. When George Weah came to power, that $16 billion has already been used. It was additional print money that they had printed that was coming, the balance money that was coming to the country. They have already used all the money. They printed extra money. So that balance money is what raised the question, but they are saying it was $16 billion. No, it was never $16 billion. Let's correct the records here. So the Bible that the Unity Party has used over the 12 years was the MCC scorecard. And he said it right. MCC came 2004. They measured Liberia in 2006 when Unity Party came to power. They failed. They measured in 2007. They failed. They measured in 2008. They failed. All the way. So 5 years they failed. We also failed 5 years. In our first passing grade, we scored higher than them. They had 10. We scored 12. The records are there.
Okay.
Performance.
You want to zero.
It showed improved governance. 12 against 10.
Thank you, Chorpie. We have our own, or you keep saying, referring to MCC as the Bible.
No, I said their Bible,
Yeah,
not my Bible.
we have LACC, we have GACC. Okay. As the president taking any action, or this government taking any action against anyone who was indicted by these integrity institutions?
Well, the question was, who is performing better? That's a question.
I mean,
we
I'm
are
talking about the fight against corruption. So if
the
the
fight against corruption.
LACC hold on, if the LACC indicts someone and the executive follow through with that, then that's a fight against corruption. The president has not done anything in that direction.
Look,
correct?
the LACC, good question. And you're talking about imperial president. The LACC, the president does not have control over the LACC function. The LACC has prosecutorial powers. What has stopped the LACC from going to court? The president has not stopped them.
All right.
You see, look, no. Let me end the question.
Because a different topic you want to start.
You asked the question. We have to end the question. The president has not stopped the LACC from exercising
I got your
powers.
answer.
Dennis, can I say something before we take the call? Just 30 seconds.
Yeah,
please.
you're only saying that because I need to set up the number. So go ahead for 1 minute. You take him. Okay. Please don't take 3 minutes.
No, I'm not going to take 3 minutes. I just want to talk about this issue of corruption again, because I want my man Chorpie to understand that if we're using whatever standard that Chorpie wants us to use, and I'm okay with that, I'm fair with it. Whether it's the standard that Liberian people work hard, and so that's why we succeeded under President Sirleaf. Liberian people didn't automatically get lazy under President Weah. If you say the international community supported President Sirleaf, under her first or second term, suddenly the international community people didn't get tired under President Weah. If you say, the combination of the two forces under President Sirleaf is what made, some of the success, we acknowledge that. But somehow, in the beginning of the show, you say domestic resource mobilization have increased, which is a fact, but somehow there are still challenges in addressing some of the issues that are stifling our development. So you're saying two things. You're saying that we increasing potential for domestic revenue, which is true. We've gone beyond 600,000, but we still lag behind when it comes to development. So the issue of fighting corruption, for example, is one of the issues that we have not addressed. Just like Dennis asked you just now, and you won't beat around and drill all around. You have to face this thing head on to say, yes, I'm president. I acknowledge that there is corruption in this country.
Thank you.
We have to fix it as a country. That's the only way you can fix it.
Thank you, Morris.
But we can leave that hanging, Dennis.
You have your chance to respond.
Yeah, and I think Morris continued to miss the thing. Nobody said the country is perfect. Even in America, still have challenges. This very country, the United States of America, every country in the world still have challenges. So nobody has said there's no challenge in Liberia, or the government is not facing challenges. Increased domestic revenue does not mean that every problem in Liberia is going to disappear. But the domestic revenue is not matching up with the reality that the government met. The reality was a valley of poverty. And so when we're talking about comparison, we are looking at the improvement that was done. And quickly, I'm coming back to this question of the LACC and the prosecutorial powers. The president of Liberia, you cannot say the president will be or acting imperial. You want the president to intervene in the judicial process. At the same time, you say the president should not intervene. The president cannot intervene in the judicial process. The LACC is an autonomous agency. It has its own powers. They can go to court and prosecute anybody that they found wanting for corruption. Nobody, Judge Weah has never stopped them from prosecuting. Judge Weah is not responsible for them. If Judge Weah intervene and then tell the LACC go prosecute, then he can use that same power to tell the LACC don't prosecute. And I think the reason why, let me just end. The reason why the Unity Party is having this problem with Judge Weah is they are not used to a democratic president, a president who respects the rule of law. They are used to a president who wants to intervene and dominate and control the process. Weah has said he's a democratic president. He's not going to intervene in the judicial process, and he has been doing that. And that is good. That's why we want in Liberia a president who respects the due process.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to bring in our callers here. The first caller is Millicent Yadolo. Millicent, go ahead. You're live.
Mr. Jah, thank you so much for the show, and thanks to the two panelists in your studio. I just have some clarification to make on some of the things Mr. Kromah was saying. Mr. Kromah, I'm 56 years old. I've been following Liberia politics since 85. I voted in Liberia in 1985. So there is no way somebody can try to brainwash me or shield something on Liberia thinking that we don't know, and you can try to lie to us. Ellen government, the money international community pump in Liberia. If you just get a fraction of that money to George Weah for the past 5 years, you compare Liberia to the Miami the men talk about, and they are making fun with it all over the place. Like the development that going on in Liberia right now is 95% supported by Liberia, own revenue generated. It's not out of foreign or fund, donors fund. Liberia receive billions of dollars to take Liberia back to its pre-war status, which cover the hospital you were talking about. That's only one modern hospital was built under Malanseri government, which is the Jackson Hebdo Hospital in Capeta that was built by the Chinese government with 10 million USD, not a cent came from Liberia government. The road you're talking about from Broad Street to Sincor, you were talking about, was sponsored by World Bank. From ERW Junction to Rubber Fee, World Bank. We were in Liberia. I left Liberia 2008 when Eddie came to power. I was in Liberia for almost 3 years and traveled to the United States. So we know all these facts.
Thank you.
It was not Liberia own government done it. And you talking about hospital? Joe, we are building 14 million hospital out of Liberia own money. Joe, we got hospital in Zwedru out of Liberia government money. Joe, we got hospital in Riverside out of Liberia government money. I'm not talking about Emory Hospital in Popoli, which cost $25 million built by United Arab Emirates government, which is 2 times bigger than what they built in Tapeta.
Thank you.
So you want to see the government has done nothing to improve health? Look at the dialysis center, the first of its kind in Liberia, IGFK. Center, IGFK.
Melicent, please wrap it up. You're not debating the people. Just make your point and leave 1 minute, please.
Okay. I want to ask you one simple question. What happened to the 30 million USD that was given by the Libyan government to Liberia for agriculture farm, marketing agriculture farming to be open in Liberia, and the project was launched in Lupa County? What happened to the money and the equipment? What is the fate of it?
Thank you. Let me bring on Mr. Elvis Morris. Elvis, go ahead. You're live. Let's use 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Mr. Jah. And today I want to give credit to Blue Jay. I think he did a good job. He won the debate, not because he's smarter than Mr. Kromah, but just because the facts are on his side. You know, the reality is everybody who were in Liberia during Ellen time, they know what the conditions were on the ground. Things were in perspective at the time safer for the international community to come there because you had an all-male mission to Liberia there. You know, like everybody said, this is a big factor. International goodwill to the country was so immense at that time. Okay? So the thing here is people like Morris, which I respect him, I like him, but I think people like them, they feel like because they were associated with the World Bank manager, the Harvard educated woman in her government, they have this hubris about them that Ellen brought all the best people from around the world, so thereby her government was quote unquote more competent. But the reality is her government was more sophisticatedly corrupt, more sophisticated, in the corruption than George Weah government is, which is so blatant and elementary. But the reality is Ellen had way more help in terms of governance, in terms of international goodwill, in terms of consultancy than Weah has ever had. So if you're doing apples to apples, you'll probably be on par with each other, or Ellen might be slightly better by perception because you have quote-unquote competent people. So in this debate, I would agree with Brogy on his points. And I think, Morris, you can't argue against facts, but both of you did a good job. Thank you for taking my call, Mr. John.
Thank you. Let's bring in our last caller here from 240 area code. Your name and where you're calling from. Caller, go ahead. Your name, please. All right, that caller has dropped off. Morris.
Yes.
So
You muted, Dennis. We can't hear
Chorpie,
you.
go ahead. Chorpie, go ahead. Respond to our callers.
You know, for more, yeah, I think
Yeah. The message will be careful, Chorpie.
I know, right? Well, you know, the callers makes very poignant description of the situation in Liberia, and this is the point I was trying to make here. We're not trying to bash or denigrate that period or the condition of the country, but the reality, our reality, we can't dismiss reality. And let me just, while I'm responding here, let me just make this point, because there is a myth of falsehood that is being made by the Unity partisan or Joseph Baga supporter that, you know, Weah is not getting this goodwill because he's not sophisticated and Ellen Johnson was more sophisticated. No. International welfare has a timeline. If you look at the Paris Club programs they have for Liberia, and people should have followed this thing, it was clear, they stated clearly, we are giving Liberia debt. When Liberia will start paying the debt off, the period of time it will stop. They said it by the second term. So already international goodwill, because they said that after 2 elections, which ended in 2017, Liberia should be able to stand on its own. In fact, almost were left from Liberia by 2014 because they wanted Liberia to transition by itself. If you recall, in Ellen Johnson, the records are there. The Unity Party government, they begged the international community to stay. 2016, in fact, the CDC itself asked the international community to extend the time because of election. We did not trust the Unity Party to govern the country on its own for election. So the tenure for international goodwill ended for a period of time. They felt that if the baby not to work now, I mean, not to work now, you're on your own. So it is not because of some magic. So Weah is not receiving that kind of support because Liberia is no more in war. Right. That support was people who came from war. We're in war situation. We are not in war situation. We're not getting our support.
People are using Sierra Leone. Say Sierra Leone still getting big money, and both of them are not in war. What's your response?
Great. The Sierra Leone money is coming from the same project we touched talking about, the Millennium Corporation Challenge, right? So Sierra Leone was able to pass those tests and they get money. But now here's a problem. And we show the incompetence of the Joseph Baga Unity Party. One of the criteria for getting that money, if you have received that money before, like Liberia did on the Sirleaf government through international assistance and all the social cushion were there, when they got that money, 257 million, one of the criteria to get new money is that you must pass follow tests. You have to review your uses of that money. After that money was given to Liberia, the Sirleaf government at the time, the international community drew down before the end of 2017. So much of the work now was left with the government itself. They squandered that money. Even Joseph Baga himself admitted. They blundered, they left the country in dire strait. So when you mess up like that, you cannot get that money again. Because why? You have to go back and fix everything. And Weah has been trying to fix it. He has been trying to fix it. And thankfully, on his own, we have passed the test. So Weah is fixing it. The evidence is in the MCC passing score, 12 against 10. Unity Party had 10 when they passed. We have 12. Improvement, better governance on their own.
Thank you. Morris, your response to our callers.
I mean, I appreciate the callers, and all of them. I like the fact that people are calling to give their opinion about the country, because everybody have a different view about the way they see Liberia. It's a mischaracterization to think that because I worked for the Ellen administration under the second term, it means I look down on people in the CDC government. That is not true, because I have so many friends that work for the CDC government. I'm not an elitist. I understand development very well, but I'm not an elitist. I don't look, down on anybody. I have a strong view on the progress the country is making and how slow that progress is. I'm willing to have a conversation with anybody who feels that we should talk about this, on the side. We can talk about that issue. I know, the first caller, I think
Morris,
his name is
Morris, hold your thought. Let me see if I can get this caller again. Caller, your name and where you calling from?
Yes, hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Caller, your name and where you calling from?
Yeah, my name is Emma Square. I'm from Maryland.
Edmond Glay, you said.
Emma Gray.
Oh, Emma, go ahead.
Maryland.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm speaking Siri.
Yes, I just had a question. I'm a young Liberian. I'm in the diaspora. Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, I just had a question about. I'm currently watching this debate. And I'm just having mind-boggling statements being said about the current government situation with the central bank and 25 million being lost. And I don't understand that. But I just have one question: how can all the government leaders be under an audit? Like, what organization is in place for them to be under audit, for them to release all the financial information and records to the public? Is that somehow common in Liberian politics or no?
Thank you. You can get your answer off the line. Go ahead, Morris.
So as I was saying, and I mean, just to answer the caller quickly, you can go to the GSC website and you'll find all of the audit reports that have been conducted so far back as maybe 2005, 2003. You should be able to find a lot of the audit reports from the different government agencies. They're there. The ones that got audited, you'll find that kind of information. On one of the callers, I think his name is Madison or something, the first one, right? I think that's
Madison Yadolo.
Okay, so I'm not sure when last he was in Liberia. It seems like he's talking from a distant perspective.
You can't be too sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. But the issue he raised about the 30 million is a legitimate question. And that's one of the areas that I thought that we had, under the President Sirleaf administration, where we had issue, because there were clear evidence of mismanagement of the Japanese rice that came to the country. There was an investigation that was launched, and that investigation pointed fingers to certain key actors in the government, but nothing happened. You see, I'm able to show evidence of that kind of report, right? Unfortunately, people try to be political about the issues that are wrong in Liberia, and I'm not trying to be political here. I'm trying to show you that there is systemic issue of corruption in the country. Liberians generally in Liberia are corrupt. People aspire to public office because it is the only means by which they can get themselves out of the economic hardship that they experience. It's not Josh Weah's fault. It's not Ellen Johnson Sirleaf's fault. It's a systemic problem. Unless we fix some of these problems, improve the private sector, create opportunities for young people to get jobs in the private sector, this particular culture will continue. People will lose their lives. There will be problem because everybody is competing for a very small pile of the public resources. Somebody else made. Okay, so Elvis, I appreciate the commendation, and I think I remember you, but not to. I want to make sure. I hope that I see Elvis that I at least know from Bristol. If you are, then I beg you get in touch, my man, so we can talk more about these things. I'm not emotional about anything about Liberia, but I want us to talk about the facts and the numbers that I threw out. I know people are wondering where all these numbers come. Just all you have to do is simple Google, find out. Google Liberia foreign direct investment, 2006 to 2015. You will see clear data. I will show you what all that data is. Google Liberia Agricultural Rice Program, 2006, 2011. You will see the numbers. These are not numbers that I'm throwing out of my head because I'm crazy. These numbers are actual factual numbers.
Thank you, Morris.
Yeah.
Join Focus on Liberia tomorrow at 7 p.m. for the History Channel. The History Channel comes on every other Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So join us. And then on Sunday, we're going to be sitting here with Ambassador Louis Brown He's member of Team Cummins 2023. You don't want to miss this show. Gentlemen, thank you for a spirited debate tonight. At this time, we're going to get your closing comments. Chorpie, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm very well.
All right.
Very well.
So Chorpie started it. So Kromah, you go first. Your closing comments.
Thank you for the opportunity again, Dennis. I think it was a good discussion. We should continue these kinds of discussion. Hopefully, next time my man Chorpie come in, you'll bring some data. I know the Propo medium-term report is out. I'm still perusing it yet to see what the progress that have been made. Hopefully, when I come to the next debate, I will bring you some more data on what progress have been made, because they made a whopping ambitious plan of taking 1 million people out of poverty. And hopefully, when we come back to this discussion, we'll talk about how many people have gotten out of poverty. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you, Chorpie.
Thank you. Chorpie.
Yeah, I wanted to close on this point, which is the heart of the debate, that the Unity Party government is competent and capable of leading the country. Because that's the heart of this debate, that they were competent and they served well. I reject that question. The Unity Party government is the most incompetent political organization in the country because they have been tested in the school, dismal, failure, flunk. And Joseph Boakai, who is the leader of that party, has no political strength. In 2005 elections, he was put on the ballot by Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to help him win elections. But if we look at the 2005 election results, the first round, it shows Boakai was a very weak candidate. He did not help Ellen in the first round, only because the Unity Party was founded by Lofian and was very strong in Lofa candidate. So Lofa got a little bit of vote, but Ellen did not win Lofa by a huge number in 2005. So Boakai did not bring anything to that ticket or the Unity Party. The subsequent victory that the Unity Party won in Lofa was as a result of their standard bearer at the time performance. But that first election, 2005, shows Boakai actual strength. He's a weak candidate. In the recent by-election in Lofa County, shows him to be a very weak candidate. And his over 50 years in public service has all been milking the government cheese. He has only 2005, Boakai did not have any farm in Liberia. He called himself an agriculturalist. 2011, he did not have any farm in Liberia. He called himself an agriculturalist. Even up to 2017, he has an agricultural company that broke down, shows incompetent. And his budget for his vice presidential office was more than the community college in Lofa County, more than the county healthcare system. So all we have seen from Boakai is feeding on government, taking from government and not giving back. Such a man cannot run for our president and win elections in our country. Thank you.
Thank you. We want to thank our viewers for also being with us, contributing through your comments and your calls. Keep it here at Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. At this time, we're going to draw down the curtains and play our song that says, "We are all Liberians." Whether you believe the country was better under President Sirleaf or better under President George Weah, we are all Liberians, and we must do whatever it takes to make our country the glorious land of liberty. Good night, and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberia people.